G'day, I'm Clive and welcome back at the Armadale Reptile Centre, and we're back with Lucy. So today we're going to be talking about the
Dugite.
The Dugite.
Yes,
Yeah, start with the biggest one first.
We're going to start with the most common, probably the most common people come across.
Yep.
Yes.
So the Dugite then, let's say with the size, how big would they get up to?
So on average 1.5 metres is a pretty good size. They can get to 2 metres. 2 metres and above is rare. I think I've seen one individual that's been over 2 metres. But generally, just like everything else, the bigger it is, the more mature it is. So a lot of people probably don't come across the much bigger individuals because they've been in this world a long time. They know where's safe, where's not safe. But 1.5 is a very average size.
Yeah, so the actual video of the Dugite we got today, he's about 2 metres or just over 2 metres. He looked.
Yeah, that's Brutus, and he's one of our biggest individuals, and it's very rare to see one his size.
So roughly how old is Brutus?
He is a rescue, so I don't know for a fact how old he is, but we know he's fully mature, so we would place him probably about 10 years older. And that's a pretty good age for him.
So is that the average age, or?
No, they can get quite a bit older. They can live for almost up to 20 years. In captivity, they'll naturally live a lot longer than in the wild. But you'll find that heavy predation happens for young individuals. And then once they get to a good decent size, so probably over about 1 metre, the number of predators that can get to them are reduced quite a lot. But to make it to a good sized adult is an incredible achievement nowadays. So yeah.
So going from the small babies.
Yes.
Are they eggs or are they born live?
So they are eggs. So they do lay a clutch of eggs, and the mother will incubate and protect the eggs. Once the eggs hatch, however, that's the end of her commitment. She doesn't really care about them after that. She'll go one way, they'll go and scatter the other way. So there is a bit of a misconception that mothers will hang around and protect their young. Mother does not care. She's done her bit, she's done her 9 yards, and she's out of there, ready to move on and do it again somewhere else.
How large is the clutch of eggs?
Well, it does vary a great deal. So they can only have a few, or they can have up to about 15 eggs. And then it is highly variable on how many of them are even viable eggs as well. So it's potential for a few of them to become what's known as slugs. So it's eggs that just haven't gotten to the end of their lifespan. Whether they were ever fertilised at the beginning or not is debatable. And then, so you may have, say, she's laid 15 eggs, but only 6 individuals actually emerge and survive to move on. So it's a life history that they have, where they have many young, because predation on their young is very high. So having lots of babies mean that some babies will survive, and they don't have any parental care. So the babies just have to fully developed when they're born and fend for themselves entirely on their own. Yeah.
So the babies, I think we mentioned in one of the other videos, but about how venomous these babies are, because there's a misconception at times, isn't there?
There is that babies are more venomous than adults, and it's just a sheer fact on biological size. A baby typically can be born at about 30 centimetres, and that's very small as opposed to a 1.5 metre adult. They are fully developed, but the size of their fangs, the size of their venom sacs are very small. Not to say they can't cause damage or injury to people, but the chances of it are significantly lower. And as you can imagine, an animal that's only 30 centimetres long has so many more predators than an animal that's 1.5 to 2 metres long. So they are a lot more scared, but like all animals, they don't want to fight. They want to fly, they want to hide, they want to get away from everything. So they will, if you give them the chance, get away from it all.
So the adults as well, is it right that they prefer not to fight, but rather than back off, give you a warning and try and get out there?
Sometimes they won't even give you a warning. They'll just look at you and be like, you're getting a little bit too close. You keep advancing towards them, and then they might do the traditional kind of bend back and the S that people are very familiar with. And then you'd have to push it even further, and then that's when they'd probably try and bite. Typically that's a closed mouth bite, so they're not actually got their mouth open. It's just a kind of like a smack against you.
It's like a warning. So
yeah, and then push it even further, and then, well, now you're getting into the dangerous territory. But for them, if they bite a predator to them and envenomate it, they now have to go through a process of making all that venom within their body before they can eat again. So they're unable to eat for a period of time if they bite a predator, so they don't want to do it. It just makes their life harder, so they'll give every warning in the book before they give the final warning.
So if you do approach one and you find one there and they're local to you, what is the best thing for a person to do?
So typically it's said that a snake can strike to half of its body length. So you got a 2 meter Dugite, he'll probably be able to strike within 1 meter. So the recommended advice is, if you are beyond that strike zone, you are pretty safe to slowly move and walk away from it. If you're within that strike zone, it's recommended that, I know it goes against every instinct, but you just remain still. If you remain still, you look like a tree. A tree's not dangerous, a tree's not going to harm them, and they just go, okay, well, this is boring, I'm just going to move over here now. So that's the recommended advice.
So that'd be slowly and gently.
Very slowly and gently, yeah.
Because some people move slow and then go, the last minute.
Yeah. No, it's they do react quite heavily to movement. So if you think about it, when they're going around looking for something to eat, it's those quick, sharp, darting movements that makes them aware that there's prey around. So naturally, they're inclined to investigate or look at quick, sharp movements. So if you're walking along and you start waving your arms or jumping up and down at him, he's going to get intimidated by it. And then suddenly you might find that he's a bit angry with you and you can't just walk away from him. So it's always best to keep it nice and calm, nice and slow, nice and chilled out. If you're chilled out, he's chilled out.
So where's the most likely spots you'd have a female lay her eggs?
Anywhere where it's... So they need two things are the best places for them. They need somewhere where there's going to be food for when their young are born, and then for the mother as well, because once she has laid her eggs and she's incubated them, she's going to want to feed. That's the first thing that she's going to want to do. So she's going to try and pick a spot where food is relatively abundant, but then also they want somewhere where it is sheltered, where they aren't going to get disturbed, they aren't going to get dug up, they aren't going to get moved or anything like that. So places like, you might find them in your horse stables, you might find them in your chook pens, you might find them near bird aviaries, but by far the biggest thing is refuse and litter around people's properties. So building materials are probably one of the most common things that you find them under, particularly like tin sheets and things like that, because they warm up, so they stay nice and warm, nice and dark, they can hide under there. They generally don't move for months at a time when people have these in their gardens. So but even things like under houses, if you've got houses on stilts or you've got gaps under your house, you might find them under there, in and around sheds, places like that. So anywhere that is going to be a dark, warm, probably with lots of food around place.
So in other words, you've got lots of mice around.
Yes.
There's a high chance they're going to be laying eggs there.
Yeah. Even things like tree stumps and trees that have fallen over and things like that. So it needs to be relatively sheltered.
Under some of the concrete slabs where the backyard, you're getting the wash.
Yeah. So they could be anywhere, and not just the mothers and eggs, but even just adults chilling out for the day on their way to find a different meal or anything like that. So you can find them all over the joint.
And the Dugite is the most commonly removed snake?
In the Perth metro area, yes, definitely. Because of urbanisation, they've been one of the few animals that have probably benefited from it, because with coming with us comes all the rodents, the rats, the mice, the shelter, all those sorts of things. So they have been able to adopt into our lifestyle very easily. and they've probably benefited from it. So that's why you will find them more commonly around here.
So it's common to see them around the sand dunes and
Yeah,
beaches.
you do have them along the beaches. They're very, very, very widespread. They have a very good ability to go into multiple different sort of, particularly like ground types, so sand, clay, even to a small degree they might go into swampy areas or marshy areas, forested areas. So they're very adaptive to those sorts of things, but they are restricted to the southwest. So they do need that more of a cooler climate than some of the other elapid species we have.
So hence, if you walk in the Bibbulmun track, like I did, I saw my first snake actually on the Bibbulmun track just outside of Donnelly River. That was a Dugite. So keep your eyes open. And it's normally on the sunny part of the track where they're warming themselves back up again. That's right?
Yep. And did you just walk on straight past him, or did he move on
Oh,
himself?
I tapped my walking poles,
Yeah.
and looked at me, turned around and went off.
And straight off. Yep, that's it.
That's all you need to do. Don't panic. Just give your poles a tap and wait, and they will move.
Yeah, they definitely will.
So they're basically down in the southwest, but what's the rough area people may get to see them?
Well, you'd have to go out of the city into a bit more of the rural-y sort of areas. As far as I understand, I've never known anyone to catch any above sort of the Chittering, Chidlow area. I've never known them to be north of there. But they will go all the way down to the south coast.
Around the Esperance area?
Yeah, and they'll go over a little bit towards the east. And I think towards the border is basically about it with South Australia. I don't believe they go anywhere into South Australia. But yeah, you will have to go further out to see proper wild ones, and not ones that have just gotten very used to being around people.
And I think, I can't remember which one I was reading about, but can a Dugites actually found on places like Rock Ness and...
They can be, yeah. As far as I understand, I only am aware of one subspecies that's an island subspecies. Tiger snakes is another one that have a few island variants, but it's very possible that they are on the islands.
And there's a couple of islands off the Esperance area.
Yeah.
Found out there.
Yeah. And they would probably be quite different to our mainland ones in various ways. So sizing, they'd likely be smaller. They'd likely be different colouring. Like the average colouring would likely be very different, depending on the climate they're in, and then the diet that they have. So that can have a great deal of impact on how they look.
I was just about to ask about the diet, because that's mainly, we've mentioned mice.
Yes.
We've got frogs as well. We've got other lizards.
They're predominantly mammal marsupial eaters.
Yeah.
So they are fully terrestrial animals, so they are on the ground entirely their life. And mammals marsupials are the main diet, but they have been known to go for other reptiles. Bobtails is a big one that people have captured them having a snack on quite a lot. King skinks as well, particularly when you get to like the Juney areas. But mammals marsupials are the top, but they are a bit of garbage guts. And
it's coming back to the misconception when people say if you see a bobtail there'll be no snakes.
Ooh, yes.
A lot of people think that's because snakes are afraid of the bobtail, but it's the opposite.
Yes.
The actual bobtail's in an area that they feel safe, that there's no snakes.
Yeah, more than likely, yeah.
Yes, so don't take that interpretation if it's a bobtail there's no snakes, because there possibly is.
No.
But just not in that direct vicinity. But maybe 10, 15, 20 metres away they can be.
Yes, very true.
Anything else you think people need to know that's important?
Well, Dugites are a difficult one to ID for a lot of people. Their colour morphs are incredibly varied. It is probably the most varied animal that we have over here. They can range from very pale colouring to very, very dark colouring, and every type of shade of browns and whites and creams and yellows in between. They can have olive colouring to them. They can not have olive colouring. And then on top of that, they could have spotting. So a lot of them will have black spotting along their body, whether that's quite a bit or not a lot. They could be quite striped with their spotting. They could be quite zigzaggy with their spotting. The variation is so extreme that identification can be difficult for people. The main way we can identify a dugite, if we're not 100% certain that the colour variation is very extreme, is location. It's very unlikely that there's any other sort of a leopard in an area that a dugite is in, other than the tiger snake. So it is, but typically the main colouring type you'll have is this olivey grey sort of colouring, and they do have these black speckly, spotty to them, and that could be a few, typically more up towards the top of the body, but it could extend all the way down. It could have and zigzags as well. Yeah,
and on top of the head, they've got just a slightly larger black area instead of just spots. So they've got a few gathered.
They can do, yeah, they can do, but at the end of the day, there's no rule as to how to identify a dugite on its colour morph alone, and there should never be a rule, because you'll make so many mistakes otherwise. And then that's led to a bit of a sad situation, because of their high variety and the ability to misidentify them very easily. There's lots and lots of very small snake species that get incorrectly ID'd as dugites, and then unfortunately are dispatched because of that fear of the dugite. And so it has led to a bit of issue in that way. So it's very important that we learn to identify what is dangerous and what isn't, but then also on top of that, even more importantly, we identify how to deal with it without disturbing it. Is also incredibly important process.
Wow, that was a lot of information. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
We'll be back with another video with Lucy. We've got quite a few actually we've got lined up, so keep an eye out for them. And I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you're not a subscriber, remember, go down below, click on the subscribe button, click on the like button as well, and I almost forgot, next to the subscribe button there's a bell button. Click on that and select all, so you can be notified of all future videos. And if you are already a subscriber, again, I thank you very much.